Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatuhu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah TV. And as always, I am your host, Ismail BullocK. Now, we always like to talk about beneficial topics, and we also like to discuss topics that are relevant to our everyday life. And at the moment, as we know around the world, we are facing the situation of the coronavirus. There's a lot of people out there panicking. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people, unfortunately, are also spreading rumors and false information. So we're going to, inshallah, shed some light today in this episode on the aspect of how a Muslim should be in these kind of situations, as well as some medical advice and some clarifications of these false rumors and misconceptions that are being spread. To do that with me is my guest, brother Almir. Assalamu alaikum. Now, obviously, you're no stranger to the show, but of course, at the same time, you work in the medical field, so you're regularly in the trauma center of a well-known hospital here in Dubai. So you're obviously briefed, trained, and obviously up to date on the precautions that would for such things as coronaviruses and these kind of, I guess you could say, epidemics in general. So today we want to talk about it firstly from an Islamic, or altogether from an Islamic perspective on how the Muslim should react in these kind of situations. Also, what is the reality behind it, and what are the rumors and the fake news, as they say, that people spread about this as well?
Well, Jazakallah khair for inviting me for the show. SubhanAllah, I mean, before we even start, we should know that everything happens by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a belief of a Muslim, and there is no doubt in that. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَعْصِمُكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ إِنْ أَرَادَ بِكُمْ سُوءًا أَوْ أَرَادَ بِكُمْ رَحْمَةً, which means, say, who is it that can protect you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if He intends for you or an ill or intends for you mercy? وَلَا يَجِدُونَ لَهُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا. And they will not find for themselves besides Allah any protector or any helper. So in this case, as in any case, it's a test from Allah. It's something that was decreed. And it's a calamity. Some people will find it to be a test. Some people find it to be a calamity. Other people will find it to be a kind of a wake-up call.
It's interesting, you started on a very good point, because this is the reality that we must look at as Muslims, that everything is, like you said, everything is done by qadr, everything is predestined. I mean, Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدْرٍ, that indeed everything we have created with predestiny. So this is a very important point. You mentioned that everything is predestined.
Exactly.
Everything that happens for a reason. It was allowed to happen by the will and permission of Allah. So that's a very important thing for us to understand, first of all.
Yes, and a Muslim should put that in his mind or her mind right away before delving into issues like this. I mean, subhanAllah, you don't have to delve into this issue of this virus, because it's kind of happening everywhere. So we have to be careful about that, of course. But one has to understand his or her place regarding this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, we as Muslims, we need to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what I was saying also, like it's a calamity for some people, other people will be a test. For third people, it will be a wake-up call. So for some people, be like, I need to turn to Allah and ask for help. And this is actually a mercy for those people. Maybe they were far away from Allah in their deen, or they repented, or even people accepting Islam. So this could be like a mercy for them. So the state of a Muslim, that he or she should always be seeking refuge in Allah, having tawakkul in Him, seeking to be reliant upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believing that every benefit, harm and calamity is in His hands, like we mentioned earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِي قَلْبَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no disaster strikes except by the permission of Allah. And whoever believes in Allah, He will guide his heart. And subhanAllah, this is a very straightforward ayah. There is not much of a need of explaining this ayah or making tafsir of it, just knowing that no disaster strikes except by His permission. So yes, this could be classified as a kind of a disaster, and it's done with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a Muslim in this regard should not be saying, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my family, my people, and so on and so forth. And we're going to touch upon the rumors later on, because it tied into this is other things that some of us fall into, which is false. Some of the assumptions and some of the, how can I say, putting certain people in a bracket and so on, that we always advise against. We're going to come back to that. So knowing this, that everything that happens by the will of Allah, and also for us to understand that it will make us come to peace with it, and we're going to face the situation in a much, much better way. At the end of the day, as a Muslim, a Muslimah, we have to be patient and act calmly, because such a thing that, like I said, is happening, it could be a mercy for us. It could be a blessing for us. So whenever he is afflicted or she's afflicted with calamity, whatever, it could be wealth related, right? We talk about this all the time. Could be health related, property or family. A Muslim should react by being patient, seeking the reward of Allah, and being pleased with His decree, because this elevates his status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more patient you are, especially the harsher the situation is, the higher level you're reaching with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this, of course, we know for a fact that a person who's extremely patient in these situations, especially when it's hitting, like we say in English, close to home, then that individual, when he passes away or she passes away eventually, maybe not from this disease, then they will reach a high rank of that, not only entering Jannah, but a high rank in paradise, very high rank, right? So this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the patient people who are tested with all of what He says. And we surely will test you with something of fear and hunger, and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient. And those are the ones whom are blessings from their Lord and mercy, and it is those who are rightly guided. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning in the Quran. Now, so we're talking about Islamic perspective, putting your trust, tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accepting His decree, knowing that this happens for a reason. All of those things aside, we're not saying aside, this is the first and foremost. Secondly, Islam does encourage us and actually commands us to seek cure through medicine, right? After we've done all of the things we're supposed to do, we put our tawakkul and everything. Now we're not the ones to say, I've done all I did. I did everything that I'm supposed to do. Now, if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Khali wali, leave it. Be it from precautionary standpoint, be it from seeking medicine or whatever, right? I mean, I think even you mentioned it earlier. We talked about it when the Prophet ﷺ, a person was asking the Prophet ﷺ a tawakkul. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Prophet asked him, did you tie your camel? Because he came and he tied his camel. He said, yes, if you tie your camel, then you put tawakkul on Allah.
Yeah,
I mean, along those lines.
I believe, if I recall correctly, is that the man said to him, should I rely on Allah and leave the camel untied? The Prophet said,
yes.
Rely on Allah and tie your camel.
Exactly.
So we know, of course, we know definitely that we have to trust in Allah. Allah says, فَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever relies in Allah, truly relies on Allah, Allah is sufficient for him. But like you mentioned, at the same time, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, tadawu, like to treat yourself with medicine. And then he mentioned that for every illness that has been sent down, there is a cure for it. Whoever knows, knows, and whoever doesn't, doesn't. So whether you found that cure or not, whether people realize at the moment there is a cure or not for it, there is a cure.
Yes.
And a bit off the topic, but I recently read yesterday, actually, there was a second person who had, it seems to have been cured from HIV. So
True.
until now, HIV was something that was cureless. It can be delayed, it can be reduced, but that whatever they may be, the antibodies or whatever it may be that are in there from HIV are always there, that they just kept it a minimum. And some people may have a long life, but the illness is always there, and eventually it catches up with them 30, 40 years maybe later. But this was a second person who, as far as they can sell, the HIV antibodies are completely gone. Yes. By using his own stem cells, something along those lines.
But the interesting part is, look, we talk about calamity. This individual, and this is the second case, similar case. One was cured in 2011 or 15, anyway, and this one has been cured for a while, but he just decided to come out publicly because it's a patient confidentiality. You're not supposed, if he doesn't want to talk about it, that's fine. So he came out. He said, so basically, this second patient, same like the first, similar. You could say similar pathway. It was infected with HIV, developed cancer, had cancer. I forget which one, but he had cancer, both of them. And while receiving chemotherapy, this kind of suppressed the HIV, plus in addition to stem cells. Subhanallah. So he had a double calamity, HIV and cancer. One who has HIV could live all his life, and the virus could be dormant in his body, not doing anything. You're just positive for it, but there is no activity of the virus. So you are basically healthy otherwise. Subhanallah, look how the calamity struck, and probably person, Allah Alam, thought, oh, I have HIV, I have cancer. What's going to happen to me now? And from Allah, and he got cured from both.
So, so the emphasis on that, really my point was that, there are cures out there. We don't always find them. And something else I don't want to go too off the topic, but it's just something that's also, I think, is subhanAllah amazing when we look at this hadith, that there is every illness that was sent down, there is a cure for it. Whoever knows, whoever doesn't, doesn't. Just recently, I was watching a documentary, and it was talking about, subhanAllah, like frogs in the jungle of Peru that secrete their own wax, and they're the only frogs in the world that do this. But they basically, to cut a long story short, they've discovered that this particular wax that generally is considered to be, to some extent poisonous, also has properties like the poison of scorpions and snakes to be used for medicinal purposes and as cures for illnesses and as treatment for cancers and things like this. So just amazing that there's so many cures out there that we just don't know yet. So it's important to people to take the steps, as that hadith clearly says.
We'll come back to the hadith, what the Prophet ﷺ said. Indeed, Allah has sent down a disease and a cure, and He made for every disease a cure. Seek the cure, but do not seek it in impermissible matters. Now, what does it mean, impermissible matters? Could mean many things, but one of the things, for example, don't do unethical, impermissible trials of certain drugs, and so on, like trying it on humans just for the sake of trying and stuff like that, which we sometimes hear, or funding it through impermissible means, stuff like that, like to not so halal ways, like we say, and so on. Therefore we are commanded by Allah to listen to the Prophet ﷺ, of course, and commanded to seek out the medicine. And this the Prophet ﷺ would advise his companions. He says, seek out the medicine, O slaves of Allah. So in that regard, we as Muslims, we have to come back to reality that this is happening for a reason, accept it, and medicine.
Hold on, you're on that point, inshallah. We're just going for a short break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now obviously we started off the first part of the show talking about the fact that everything is qadr. We mentioned Allah says that He created everything with predestiny, and we spoke about the trust in Allah. We spoke about the fact that trust in Allah at the same time doesn't mean you don't seek medical attention or medicines, and obviously in this case that you don't take, which obviously we're going to discuss now in the other parts of the show, that you don't follow the steps and measures that have been given. This doesn't mean, this is not what we call tawakkul. Tawakkul literally is relying completely on Allah and taking the steps. Otherwise it's called tawakkul, where you say I trust in Allah and then you leave, you don't go to work, you don't try to earn money, you say I'm making tawakkul only on Allah. and money will just come to me. No, you make the steps, you avoid things, you don't avoid things, depending on what you want. This is the real tawakkul. So we obviously mentioned that. And now we're going to go on to some of the topic that's more related to the virus itself and some of the issues about it, some of the fake news, some of the do's and don'ts.
Yes. So, come back to the virus itself. It's from a group of viruses called coronavirus, and coronavirus is a large group of viruses that cause common cold in us, that is ever present. We have reports that this coronavirus groups have been found to be, some of them 8,000 years old, found in soil and decomposed animals and fossils and so on. Like I said, it's a huge group of viruses. That we do have two viruses that were recently affected the world, you could say, some countries in a bigger scale and some in lesser scale, which is the SARS, which happened 2002, 2003.
Which is severe acute respiratory syndrome.
Yeah, which is my field. Respiratory is my field. And it was quite hectic. Lots of lessons were learned from it. And the death rate was about 10%. So, but the infected rate, infected amount of people, not much. I think it was maybe 2,000 or 3,000.
I think it was 8.
Yeah, it's not a huge number.
Yeah.
And affected mostly China, Canada, and a few other countries.
2000, I think 2000 is the MERS, the Middle East respiratory syndrome.
Yes, that was 2013-14.
Yeah.
That's the second one, MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which happened to cross from camels to humans. And the previous one happened to cross from pangolins, this type of a ant, kind of a animal that's in China. We call it zoonotic transfer, when it transfers from animals to humans. Somehow the vector, which is the median in between, it transferred to humans. Why? How? We don't know, because there's so many viruses that affects our even pets at home that do not affect us at all. They cannot live. So,
but just with the MERS, because the MERS didn't really spread so much, but it has a very high mortality rate compared to the others. But it just doesn't have a capacity to spread.
MERS cases, I believe, maybe 500 or so overall. Mostly affected Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia mostly. As a matter of fact, some of my colleagues were infected, and yes, I left the previous hospital just before the MERS came, and some of my colleagues were severely ill. They were in ICU for a while. Alhamdulillah, they all pulled through. But the death rate was about 30 to 35%.
Yes, very high.
Yeah. Although it was caught early and isolation was happening, and it was not as transmissible as the next one, which we're going to talk about, which is the COVID, the novel virus, which just had an outbreak in one of the provinces in China last December, which is, 3 months ago? Less than 3 months, and it's spread now all over the world. This virus particularly, so far what we know about is that it's highly transmissible, although it's not as deadly as the previous two at all. We know that. I know a lot of people, and this is where I'm coming to, a lot of people downplaying this virus. Why are we taking so much precaution? Why are the Chinese authorities, for example, they locked down the cities? They were making fun of it. Like, some of my friends, for example. Or why are we doing it here in UAE, doing all these precautions? Why are we doing it in Italy, for example, right now, what's going on with lockdown? Let me put this in perspective. I don't want to sound scary, because it's a highly transmissible disease. If the rate so far is about 2% in mortality rate, if the world gets this disease, so we're talking about 8 billion, the predictions are anywhere from 20 to 40% of world population could get it if proper measures not taken, right? Now we have to say, if we are just not doing any of these prevention schemes or measures and all these, stopping the events, mingling of people and socializing and so on, imagine 20% of population getting infected. You're talking about 1.5 billion, or let's say 2 billion. If the death rate is 2%, that is how many? That's 30 to 40 million people. That's a huge amount of people. Think about it. First World War didn't have that many deaths. Second World War, close to that, or maybe just slightly over. That is a huge amount.
That's why they say, for what I've heard and read, that in that sense it could be compared to some extent to the Spanish flu in 1916.
It is already a comparison to that, yes.
Because if that got so widespread, but I think I also read that they say the good thing about, if you can say a good thing about this virus, is that it doesn't seem to, I believe the Spanish flu was a lot longer living, in, for lack of better words, or sometimes the fact that we travel around quicker than before means it can hurry up and finish, rather than if it's lingering, and people used to travel through ships and
but
trains.
Don't forget that people that died from influenza in 1918, 1919, they did not particularly die from the influenza itself. It brought the immune system down, and then secondary infection happened.
But I mean, from what I understand, a lot of what we see with this COVID-19 novel coronavirus, it's again a secondary thing that kicks in. It causes pneumonia, from what I've read. And
well, that's what it is. But it's a single cause of pneumonia. The corona, this particular strain of corona, installs itself deep into the lung tissue, deep into lungs, and causes that pneumonia. What happened with influenza was that the immune response of the body, something called cytokines, and it's a bit of a technical term, it releases these kind of proteins in the system. It kind of overwhelms itself. Then this immune system kind of gets lower than what you're supposed to have. Then the secondary infection kills a person, bacterial infection, blood infection. And at that time, remember, this is 1918, 1919, we did not have antibacterial, we didn't have antibiotics. So that was the most of the cause of killing the people, plus the medical care, plus the ventilators. There's no mechanical ventilation at that time, which we have today. So all those things combined, that's what caused influenza. But this virus particularly, very interesting by the way, this virus is, when outside, if applied proper hand washing techniques or hand sanitizer, it's killed instantly, right? Because its coating is very weak, right? So you apply hand sanitizer over your hands, it's gone. Now, what if you wash your hands with soap and water? It may not kill it, but it's going to wash away. It does not have property to stick. It will wash away.
What's important as well, as I saw a video recently that had been done by a professor in the UK. It was a really interesting one. And it showed that they had the ultra, whatever they might call them, violet.
Ultraviolet, yes.
Light. So it was showing that she just did a quick wash that many of us do, even with soap, 5, maybe 10 seconds. And then they put it back on there, and there was still quite a lot of germs, especially here, fingertips and the back of the hands. So she was saying it's very important that when you wash, you have the soap or the sanitizer, and you're washing here, you're washing everywhere.
Let me show to our viewers, since we're talking about hand washing, how important, how you do it. So when we think of hand washing, we apply the soap on our hands, right? And then we do this, right? Now, what we need to do is, we need to do that initially. Then, like you said, do this from both sides, then each finger. See? This is how you do it.
And preferably have a thick lather of soap.
So exactly. So you're doing all of that, and still try to reach all the angles. You see, you're moving your hands because now you're trying to reach in between the fingers, right? And your nails, of course. Yes. And do this. You see, like, I don't know if the camera can see, but I am kind of
rubbing your fingertips
to enter all the places. So that we are covered. And hand washing is number one against this disease. So, but the interesting part is, once it's entrenched deep into lungs, it's a fighter. This virus is a fighter, and it does affect, according to the latest research we have, much of this virus. What we know is it's not known much. What we do know from statistics so far, it does not affect much children and pregnant women. Very low incidence of sick people that are children and pregnant women, subhanAllah, which is in itself, it's, because children and pregnant women are mostly the most of the vulnerable.
Yes.
Although it does affect older people. Now, when I say older, it's the ones who are already having something we call comorbidity. Comorbidity is something like a morbid type of a disease, like a diabetes, in older age, somebody who has hypertension, diagnosed hypertension that's treating, heart disease, some of the lung diseases such as COPD.
So in theory, their immune system is already coping or struggling or fighting another condition
Yes,
or illness.
exactly.
So hence comes in this
And
strong
finishes it
infection.
off.
It can't do both. It fails basically
Exactly.
to combat it enough.
And you know, one thing in China, what we know also from statistics, that 60% of male population smokes.
Oh,
This does not help.
definitely.
Definitely.
It's a lung,
and
a lung condition.
statistics
and
also
smoking for
show
the
that the mortality rate among males in China much higher than the females, because females in China don't smoke as much. And this trend is kind of being shown in other places, like South Korea. Mortality rate is much lower because there are less smokers. So there's a correlation to that.
I also noticed we've seen now that it's spread to Italy quite extensively now. I believe now Italy is fast catching up. If it may be if I remember the second country after China, I think possibly now.
It is now.
In cases. It was
More than
South
10,000
Korea.
cases now.
Yeah. And there's a high mortality rate, but they were saying that the population of Italy is a lot of people are in the older generations. There's more elderly people, especially in that northern part where there are younger. So this also has an effect on. So
Actually,
we see the alarming statistics.
The median age of the people who have passed away in Italy is about 81.
So we see sometimes this alarming stats as well. Like Italy, oh my God, there's so many people dying there. But at the same time, like you mentioned, a lot of them are the age where, you know, we hear about, and we're not downplaying it, of course, but we also know that a lot of seasonal flu kills, I think I read something, and I can't remember, but tens of thousands around the world a year.
It does.
Especially the elderly.
But
obviously,
you have to put that in perspective.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It does kill, but kills of the ones who are infected with the flu, about 0.01%. So now if you're talking about 2%, that's 20 times higher for this corona.
Yes.
So it's much higher. That being said, actually new guidelines are coming out now. As a matter of fact, this morning, I believe, or yesterday, from CDC, Center for Disease and Control from US, is the new guidelines of saying that the elderly who are afflicted, like we said, with some of those diseases that are chronic diseases, you know, hypertension and so on, and so other than that, that they should not definitely go out as much, especially for them, because this trend is going like that. That affects older population more than the younger one. You know, when in science, when research is done, has to be confirmed. So a lot of these things are just what preliminary results show, but the trend is going towards that. Now, what about our response? Now, what I've seen is, and as a medical professional, I need to mention this to our viewers, one thing...
Let me just hold you there, because this is something we want to spend some good time on,
Yes.
and we're coming up to the break. So join us, inshallah, after this break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now, just before the break, you started to say regards to what should our response be.
Yes. Now, as a medical professional, we are at the front lines, you could say, of battling this. So far, is almost like a pandemic, right? And the world, in many ways, is not kind of prepared for this. I mean, we see that many places are lacking in masks, equipment, machines, even staff to deal with a situation like this. Okay? Some of the reports from China that came early, that's why they built those hospitals, is that lots of people were sick. They could not even be in a hospital. They could not be admitted. There's no space. There's no facility.
Countries like China are very highly populated as well,
Yes.
aren't they? So
And their medicine is advanced medicine in a way. But some of those people are dying at home. That being said, when I go to the mall, for example, I see people wearing surgical masks. Right? I approach those individuals. If I have time, I will always approach. And maybe some of you who are watching this have seen me do that in the mall. here locally and elsewhere. I've asked the people, I said, are you sick? They say, no, I'm not sick. I'm doing this as a prevention. I said, please take your mask off. Because this virus is not transmitted through air.
So it's not airborne, as they say.
Yes. So far, we know it's not airborne. It could change, because there also research needs to be done. You know what I'm saying? This is just, what we know is that it spread through droplets, meaning that somebody sneezes or coughs and stays on a surface, or you shake somebody's hand and so on. It can live outside surfaces in a cooler weather up to 12 hours. It's shown also that it can live up to some days if it's right conditions. In hotter weather, outside, it can live only for a few minutes.
Something I want to ask you before it slips my mind. Now, I've read, and this is how it may prove interesting when it comes to an Islamic perspective, or I've heard, without having it verified. I think it came through those many messages that you get sent, which is why it's important we have these kind of discussions. But I read that the virus initially stays in the nose. Is that correct?
No.
I heard that it stays in the nose and it doesn't for a few hours before it goes into the system. And I was a bit dubious about that.
No.
Because they were trying to connect to the fact that we make wudu 5 times a day and we could wash it out.
Not necessarily. Once you get it, look, what we do know is very interesting. We found out that this virus so far, if you swallow it, let's say there's a few, let's say 100 viruses. They're so small, by the way, right?
Of course.
If you swallow, let's say, a droplet, in that droplet is about 200 viruses. If you swallow that droplet without ending in your, respiratory tract, it's very important, in your stomach, it can get killed by the acid that you have in your stomach, hydrochloric acid. We know that for a fact right now. There's research done and confirms that, 100%. What we do know is that for a person who gets infected with this virus, the symptoms start showing after 5 days. We know also for a fact that in the first 5 days before the symptoms start showing, the person is not infectious, cannot give it to somebody else, because still it's replicating in your body and so on. By the 5th day, symptoms start showing. Some people have more symptoms, some people have less symptoms. And this is the problem with this one. Some people have no symptoms at all except a sore throat.
Yeah, man, I was reading
no fever, no...
Yeah. I was reading that some people may have it.
They don't even know that they have it.
But they get to 12 days.
Yes.
And they've said if you get to the 12th day and there's no signs, that you are not going to be showing signs, but you are still contagious and you can still pass it on even though you have absolutely no signs.
Yes.
So this is something we've seen here in the UAE as well, that they've taken around the world. Now, a lot of people thought sending children home from school, cancelling big events. But even if you look at it from a logic perspective, even if you try to downplay it and say, look, out of all those people who are getting infected, not many are dying, in theory. But why then would you not want to stop those small population of people who are usually elderly, already sick, from dying? It's not like it's a small thing. So I think what we've seen now, even if you look at it logically and rationally, if you stop all those school children mixing with each other, if you stop a lot of people mixing in public events, if you stop a lot of things like try to avoid handshakes, different things, for like a whole month, logically and rationally, by the permission of Allah first of all, and foremostly, naturally and rationally, inshallah, there will be a reduction in the spread of it. It's common sense. If you're not mixing, it has no opportunity to spread. And I also have heard the closer we get to the summer seasons, the less, Allahu Alam, the less effective the spread would be, because as you mentioned, it generally survives in cooler temperatures.
Very simply, any flu season, cold season, it's in
the cold season, literally.
Cold season, in winter.
Which is why we call it a cold, isn't it?
Yes.
It doesn't make us cold.
Exactly.
It's because we get it in the cold season.
For sure it's going to lessen. Now, does it mean it's going to disappear by the time fall comes? All the experts say no.
But it could be reduced.
It could be reduced. What we need to do is, now, subhanAllah, as Muslims, we need to educate ourselves about this. The more we educate about this, the more we can stop the spread of this. So when I was, like I said, in the mall, talking to these individuals about their masks, and they said, why? And I explained to them, if you're sick, you should wear a mask, for sure, so you don't give it to others. Now, if you're sick and you don't know where you're sick from, you know what I'm saying? So some people already are kind of panicking in a way that, oh, I'm sick, I must be having a corona. Even though This individual has not traveled anywhere, has not come in contact with anybody who has traveled. That doesn't mean you have it. We have a certain criteria in a hospital, for example, that who we test for this virus.
And a lot of the time as well, you have to, many of us get really bad sore throats, we get coughs, I get seasonal allergies. So I'm regularly these days, for the last 1 month, I've been sneezing, but you can tell a difference because you have that typical hay fever allergy.
Exactly.
And you know the tickling at the back of your throat, the typical itchy eyes, the typical. So people shouldn't panic at the same time. And one of the big signs from it, isn't it? Of course, there could be the odd case that's not the case, but generally speaking, we know that runny nose, generally speaking, and sneezing, it's not a symptom of it, generally speaking. One of the telltale signs that I know, and you can confirm that, is apart from the really dry, sore throat, cough, is having a fever, and a very high fever. That's one of the main things, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but you're highly infectious at this stage. If you don't have fever, that means your body is fighting it. Definitely, you're still infectious, but not to that extent, right? It's all depending how much the virus multiplied itself.
What I mean is, isn't that one of the signs that when you should worry, or even the hospitals? And I say,
to be honest with you, if we have, subhanAllah, this, our department, our hospital is the one who installed the thermal cameras, for example, at the airport in Dubai, monitoring people who are coming. To be honest with you, it's easier for us to catch people with fever and put them in quarantine and deal with them. What is the one that we worried about going through the system, kind of bypassing, is the ones who don't have fever, who don't show these signs. But that's
kind of unavoidable to some
extent. That's
not
unavoidable, yes. What we can do is, like shows like these, tell people, if you've come in contact with somebody with the corona, if you've been exposed to travel and stuff like that, that's why there's a recommendation of self-quarantine. Or there is a recommendation, wait a second, limit your social contact. See how you are doing in a few days and see where it goes. Maybe the symptoms will get worse, right? So far in UAE, all the cases that we've seen is people who have traveled. We do not have transmission, community transmission. What's going on, what happened in China, what's going on in Italy. So that's hence the precautions that are happening right now in place, with schools being closed, with events being canceled, is because of this. We don't want this community transmission. We don't want somebody who comes through the airport, no fever, 3 days later develops symptoms, but goes to an event.
Of course.
Infects.
Or goes back to school.
Yes. Infects hundreds of people.
Or whatever it may be.
So these individuals who I saw in the mall, I told them, please take your face masks off. First of all, you are depriving the face mask for those who need it, which is the healthcare workers, the ones who are in the first line, because we are lacking of some of these things, slowly. Secondly, where is your hand sanitizer? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you are shopping in a supermarket. Yeah. You're touching the counters. You're touching the fence, the railing, the door. You're touching the cart. Where is your hand sanitizer? This is more important than your mask, because literally the only way you can get it through somebody sneezes in your face. That mask will protect you. But I said, you know what? People make a mistake. You think the mask will protect you if somebody sneezes in your face? You still have your eyes to cover. You have a face shield as well. So in the only way somebody can be protected from sneezing if you wear a face mask and a face shield. So it's like So if one needs to take care of himself, herself, avoid, of course, close contact, hand sanitizer. Have it. Put it in your jeans, on the side, in your pocket. Be ready for it. Use it. This, even influenza that happened in Spanish flu, one of the major obstacles or killing this virus off and stopping the disease was hand hygiene. Even in hospital, we say 99% of all the cross-contamination between the patients, or family giving to a patient and healthcare working, getting it from patient or giving it back to the patient, any kind of a microbe disease or anything, it's done. It can be stopped with hand washing. So for us to do that, we need to pay attention. And now we're going to talk about, we cannot panic about this. We have to be calculated. We have to know that what happens in this case is for a reason, and we have to follow guidelines. We cannot lie, at the airport, did you go to this place? Did you have contact? You know, some people do that. As a matter of fact, I think in Saudi Arabia right now, it's a huge fine, justifiably so, because that person could infect hundreds. Also, and this is subhanAllah, I'm very strict about this. And we have case in the US right now where a guy was diagnosed with corona, but mild symptoms, no need for hospital stay. And that's what we are doing in many places, here as well. If somebody who is mild case, very mild case, he's told to stay home, quarantine himself or herself. Stay home for 2 weeks, don't go anywhere. So what happened? This guy was diagnosed with coronavirus, gave it to his daughter, or his daughter gave it to him, whichever, it doesn't matter, told to stay home. His daughter stays home. Guess what? Next evening, he goes out for a social event. Infects, exposes 150 people. My brothers and sisters, I have to say this to you importantly. If you are sick and confirm that you have a coronavirus, and you go out there in Jummah prayer, in Salah, and we know there's a ruling on this. No. If you're sick, Salah, Jummah, not fard for you. Pray at home. Very important. And if you go and infect somebody, knowing while you have it, now if you don't have it, subhanAllah, this is not, if you don't know you have it and you give it to somebody, this is not your responsibility. But if you know you have it and you go out there and you give it to somebody else and somebody else suffers because of that, wallahi, it's going to be huge responsibility on your back. Because the same principle applies to somebody who speaks during the khutbah, correct? Imam is talking and the regular person is speaking. Not only that his khutbah is ruined or could be ruined, it's for the whole jama'ah, right? Imagine you're giving to a bunch of people a virus that could be deadly to some. This is unacceptable. So we need to pay attention to that. Follow the guidelines. If somebody tells you, please stay home for 2 weeks, you stay home. Alhamdulillah, in UAE, the law is your work has to pay you for those 2 weeks you stay home, and you're not deducted any annual leave or any salary and so on. And if you do, you go to Ministry of Labor and you complain, they will take care of this.
Well, it's such a long topic. Who knows?
We haven't even.
Maybe we can even have a second episode on this. But I do appreciate you coming on, inshallah. At least it's clarified something for the viewers. Again, for the viewers, inshallah, we can look at this. Trust in Allah. Know that everything is decreed. Make the du'as and the supplications to Allah, and follow the preventative measures. And until next time, inshallah, same time, same place. I leave you as always. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.